This is why I believe that these beings hail from Orion, they hail from Sirius, Aldebaran, and the Pleiades. Okay, there's a story behind it. There was actually a war in the Pleiades. When you look into a lot of these ancient tablets, I've now gone through over 1,000 ancient tablets, texts, cylinder scrolls, scriptures, you name it, books, and I've come to the realization that this story really starts in the Pleiades. I've been collecting artifacts now for about 8 years now. And a lot of the artifacts, I would say 70% of them have a representation of the Pleiadian star cluster on them. Now that's amazing. I mean, no matter what, if it's a statuette, it's got a representation on the statuette. If it's a plaque, it's got it on the plaque. No matter what I look at, it's incredible. And why are they representing the Pleiades? So I started really saying, I gotta look into the Pleiadian star cluster. And I started finding some very, hard to find documents that talk about the Pleiadian star cluster. Now it's mentioned in Iliad, the Adventures of Iliad, it's mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in many other places. So it's a well-known star system. But when you go into deeper texts, you start to discover that the Pleiadian star cluster was a place of advanced beings, advanced civilizations, which I still believe probably are some there still now. The seven stars themselves didn't just represent the only stars there. According to the ancient Egyptians, there were thousands of planets there that were inhabited by the many thousands or millions of stars that were, tens of thousands of stars, that were surrounding that Pleiadian star cluster. The seven sisters, as they call them, were just the brightest ones from our point of view, but there are many stars there. All of them have planets, and a lot of those planets are inhabited with advanced civilizations. Now, how did all this get to Earth? Well, there was a galactic war. This is some of the stuff you're going to see in the movie that myself and Dave and Dash are working on, called Chronicles of the Anunnaki. And in this movie, you're going to find out that there was a war in the Pleiadian star cluster. And the war was between the Lyrians and the Sirians. And it started off as really just, an interracial war, so to speak, and the rights to different planets. These beings own planets. Has anybody here ever seen Jupiter Ascending, the movie? Okay, if you haven't seen Jupiter Ascending, look that movie up. Not that many people saw it. It's going to be an eye-opener for you. Jupiter Ascending. The reason why is because it's like a little history documentary right there. I mean, it's really as close as you can get to understanding the power of these Atlanteans and how people own planets, people own solar systems, and people own galaxies. And that's true to this current moment right now. To this current moment right now, who owns this planet? Amun-Ra still owns this planet, until we enter into the age of Aquarius in 2025 officially. That's who owns this planet right now. Okay, people own planets. People that look like me and you own planets. This is real stuff. So what happened in ancient Egypt was they were doing a lot of mummification. The Egyptian mummification process was not so that they can just get on a solar boat in the next life and sail away. You begin to realize that these Atlantean Anunnaki people had promised them something. They promised them eternal life through cloning of their own DNA. This is what mummification is all about. It's all about cloning. They were promised, this is why they would bury themselves in tombs with all their riches. Now, anybody with any kind of common sense knows that these riches are not wrapped in a mummy wrap, so why would the riches go with me to the next realm? They're not going to make it. They're going to stay right in that tomb and collect dust. But they thought that they would be brought back to their tomb, which is why they hid the tombs. So if you go to Egypt and you go to the Valley of the Kings, the tombs were all hidden. They were, in other words, you didn't know where King so-and-so was going to be buried. Only a few people knew, and sometimes they would even kill the people who dug the tomb to keep it a secret, to keep the robbers away. So there would be a tomb that would be so elaborate, so immaculate, and it would be covered on the outside in dirt and stuff. You wouldn't even know that you were walking on top of a tomb. And the purpose for this is because they would be brought back to this secret location, and before they died, they would show the location of their hidden tomb before they died, so that they knew exactly where to come back to. So in their mind, they were going to be mummified to preserve the DNA of the body. This is why the organs and everything were taken out to prevent the body from rotting and so forth. Then their Anunnaki Atlantean, allegiances, they would come back and take some DNA out of them, clone their body back to a healthy state, and let them take their gold and their wealth and riches and everything with them, including their cats and so forth. This is what they were told. Now, of course, they were tricked, and the mummification process was definitely perfected. But the purpose of the mummification was because the promise of eternal life through cloning. Not because they were going to go on this magical solar boat in another dimension and all this other kind of stuff. This is the Orion, and it's a very important thing. This is why we're kind of harping on the Orion a little bit to understand. It aligns with 2,500 years ago. It aligns with the pyramids at Giza. A lot of you probably know that. It's an amazing, archetype in the sky that was then replicated and duplicated down on the Earth. Now, due to the precession of the equinoxes, is how we can tell that the Orion was in perfect alignment with the Giza pyramids about 2,500 years ago. Robert Bauval, a famous Egyptologist, was one of the very first people to discover that the Great Pyramids at Giza, the Great Pyramid at Giza, and the subsequent pyramids were aligned perfectly with the Orion star cluster if you do a reversal of the precession of the equinoxes. So in the sky, when you look up at the night sky, based on the Earth's tilt, and the rotation of the Earth on its axis and its position around the sun, the stars move across the sky in a particular pattern, non-stop, consistently. This is called the precession of the equinoxes. So if you rewind that clock with a computer, you can do it very easily, and go back 2,500 years ago, you discovered a perfect alignment from the ground to the sky of the Orion star cluster. Why would they do that? Why are they trying to point out Orion so much? If you go to Teotihuacan, Mexico, which I've been to, what else do you see there? A perfect alignment with the Orion star cluster. If you go to Asia, to China, where they have the three pyramids there, they're aligned with what? The Orion star cluster. All of these pyramids are aligned with the Orion star cluster. There's a reason for that. There are shafts on the Great Pyramid that perfectly align with the Orion star cluster at particular times of the year. And I believe that was because they were using the Great Pyramid as a communication device, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. So if you look at the Earth on its axis, how it has a tilt, you see that line going from north to south in a slight kind of an angle. That's the Earth's tilt. It wobbles. The Earth wobbles on its axis. It's not just a perfect spinning top. And because of that wobble, you get a different view of the stars in the sky depending on the time of day and the year and everything, the position around the sun. So that wobble gives you what we call the our signs here. Obviously Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, so forth, so on, Leo, Virgo. But based on the time of the year is where you get these signs. And this is how it works. It works off the precession of the equinoxes. So this is the sky over Giza. So if you notice here, you have a shaft for the Sirius star system. You have a shaft coming out of the Great Pyramid for the Orion, a shaft that goes to Beta Unsur Minor and Alpha Draconis. Alpha Draconis, ironically, are where supposedly these reptilian people hail from, Alpha Draconis. Now there's these Ube statuettes, which some of you may have seen me talk about online before. I have a replica of some of the actual artifacts that were found in Iraq. These Ube statuettes predate the arrival of the Anunnaki on Earth, and they show these reptilian people. One of them is breastfeeding a baby, and the other one is a man in a loincloth. Some of them have staffs, some of them have other kind of gear on that looks kind of technological, and these are all on display at the British Museum and some at the Australian Museum as well. So they're real artifacts that were discovered in Iraq. But these shafts here, see, the pyramid was a multifunctional stone computer. This is what a lot of people don't know. It wasn't just for one thing and one thing only. It was a multifunctional stone computer. So we're going to talk about that today in the afternoon, where the Thoth himself took every single calculation you could think of and built it into the structure of the pyramid, as well as the hydro generator and the physiostatic electricity that occurs on the inside of the Great Pyramid, according to the ancient mysteries. This is told to me directly by people, the homegrown teachers from Egypt. And there's a young lady here, matter of fact, who's going to be going there. She's going to introduce you to my connection there. You're going to be able to go talk to them as well. But these shafts that come out were sending a hydrogen frequency to those star systems. What's the most widely used frequency in the universe? The frequency of hydrogen. So when we're out there looking, when we have the SETI and these other observatories around the world that are looking for extraterrestrial life, looking for signals in space, they are looking in the hydrogen frequency. That's the frequency we search in space for communication, which I believe we've already found, but they don't want to tell us. A few things have come out about frequencies that have been discovered in communications, but then they fade away just as quickly as they come out, even though they're still consistently there. But to me, according to the teacher that I had, these shafts that reach out to these star systems were a communications device. Now, the Egyptians had a lot of communications devices all around Egypt, really all around the world. the Great Pyramid would generate hydrostatic electricity, and it would transmit it from the apex, and then the obelisk would pick up those frequencies and transmit them almost like a wireless signal. That's why the obelisks are made of magnetic granite. They would, crystal granite, they would grab that energy and then they would then send it on somewhere else. Another thing you will find in a lot of hieroglyphs from the ancient past and a lot of the history of the ancient Kemetic people is you'll hear about the pharaoh having communications with the gods through stones. Well, what's the first radio made out of? A crystal set radio. I talked about it just a little while ago before you guys are irate, and that was one of the things I talked about, how crystals are communication devices. Well, what they would do is these beings would broadcast a frequency in harmonic resonance to these crystals, and then the pharaoh who would be there waiting for this particular time of day to get this information would be there when the sound would come out of these stones. And they thought God was talking to them through rocks. It's just technology. That's all it was. It was just technology. These people were not the creator of the universe. They were very smart, highly intelligent, very spiritual people. They had mastered the combination of quantum mechanics and spirituality on a level that we can't even perceive at this moment. We're trying to get there. But some of them, not all of them, but some of them masqueraded as gods. The foundation of the Egyptian mysteries, which implies the Egyptian initiation, was based on the knowledge of those who instituted the mysteries. They taught that the soul had originally existed in a pure sinless state, that it then fell from its original purity and innocence and gravitated from the form of a spiritual essence into a material body. Now, Thoth talks about this in the Emerald Tablets, and this is in my book. This is really important stuff. One of the biggest things that got me hooked on the Emerald Tablets was the fact that Thoth talks about taking his consciousness and transferring it into other bodies. And he says, I walk amongst men, but unlike a man. So he wasn't taking over other people's bodies. He was making clones. So they had mastered the capability of cloning bodies or avatar bodies. They said that we would take bodies in semblance of men and take them as our own. That means we're going to create these bodies and then we're going to inhabit them for a period of time. And then when the bodies begin to get worn out, they would put them in the halls of Amenti in the regeneration chambers. And they would leave the body down there for 100 years and walk around in a different body. Then after a time, they would come back. Only the elite of the elite had access to this technology and these capabilities. And in the book, I talk about it because it really, they really just discovered about 2.5 years ago, these rooms underneath the Great Pyramid, exactly what Thoth said they were, that extend out about a mile underneath the Giza Plateau. And these archway rooms is where these cloning chambers were located, and also the halls of Amenti, which has a Stargate in it, or had a Stargate in it at the time, as well as regeneration chambers. Realizing its reduced status as the chief concern, the aim and scope of all earthly creatures, which is man, was to pass through successive states of experiences, sufferings and joys, purifications and exaltations, back to the original fellowship with not into the deity. This was the central doctrine, the pivotal point of Yeshua, Plato, Pythagoras, Jambulkus, Dvorak, and many other of the real renowned sages, philosophers and historians who flourished from the beginning of historical times. Now, if you look at these names here, Yeshua, that's Jesus. Yeshua was a real person. Now, the name Jesus, as a lot of you may have known by now, is not a real name. It was a fictional name that was made up to represent Yeshua. The J was added on even just more in recent times. But Jesus means really Hail Zeus. That's what people are saying. So when they call him on the name of Jesus, they're saying Hail Zeus. It doesn't mean what they think they mean. And even though more modern or more recent definitions of the name have come out to distract people, the original frequency and conscious intent behind that saying, it still persists till this very day. All these prayers are going up every single day, but they're not being done right. There's a way to pray. There's a way to meditate. There's a technique to it. There's a way to create your reality tunnel. There's a way to initiate these Osirian initiates. There's a way to adeptly initiate it in a way that gets a result that's favorable for you. What people don't realize is when they're praying, they're trying to cast a spell. They won't admit it. But when you're praying, oh Lord, please let this work out for me. Blah 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 blah. Oh my God, oh please, my so and so is sick, and please heal him. Or my car payment's due, and I can't make the payment. Please, where's the money coming from? That's a weak vibration. That's a low frequency. That's a position of begging, and from that position, nothing happens. It's already been scientifically proven that if I take one of those sensor caps and put it on your head and connect it to a computer, and I have you get into a very low state of begging and whining and crying and hoping and wishing and desperation, the frequency that's going to show up on that computer screen is a very slow oscillation. And that oscillation is going to be very slow and very gapped. Now, if I get you in a state of excitement, joy, happiness, and power, when I look at the computer screen, I'm going to see very tight, short oscillations, very quick and fast. That's how you get into a high frequency mode, a high frequency vibration. Unconditional love, excitement, all those types of things put you in a high frequency mode. So now you got to realize you're trying to use words to cast a spell. That's what they call it, spelling. So now you're in a position where you're saying, okay, I need to create this into my life. I really need this situation to work out in my favor. And now you're down on your knees, not a good thing to do. You're begging, not a good thing to do. You're in a low frequency vibration. See, the ancients understood this. They understood power. They understood the universal consciousness. You have to meet force with force. When you're coming in weak, you're now at a low frequency vibration, and guess what? The universal frequency for the law of attraction doesn't even hear a thing you're saying. Falls on deaf ears. You don't connect. And the reason why you don't connect is something called quantum entanglement. So quantum entanglement. What is quantum entanglement? Quantum entanglement is when matter or photons or molecules are actually on the same exact frequency. How do you do that? Well, you can do it in a laboratory. You take a laser, you take two particles, and you use something called parabolic down conversion in a laboratory, and you get those two particles on the same exact frequency. They become entangled inside of our soup of this galaxy, this energetic etherical soup. They become on the same frequency. Now, if I took one of the particles to the other end of the universe, if I had the capability of doing that, if I change the information, in other words, I can load information onto the particle that's current to me, local to me, the particle on the other end of the universe will change to match instantaneously, bypassing the speed of light. This is something called quantum entanglement. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Okay? That's what he called it, because he was like blown away when this was discovered. So for many decades, it really became a thing like, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But more recently, now quantum entanglement is a very standard thing we do every single day in laboratories and colleges and universities all over the world. We have college students using these lasers now, creating quantum entangled particles. And just about 3.5 weeks ago, we just quantum entangled a molecule and sent it from Earth into space, into a satellite in space. So now we've quantum entangled and teleported. Okay? You know, all this stuff is coming to true fruition. Everything that you see in science fiction movies, like I told you before, is real. And this is the fake existence, you know. The mundane, wake up, punch a clock, go to work, come home, get on the couch, watch TV, go back to sleep, do it all over again. That's the fake. The real is a lot more colorful and exciting. So this was the central doctrine, the pivotal point of Yeshua, Plato, Pythagoras, and so forth. So it was also the doctrine of all those fortunate enough to have been accepted by the mystery or initiatory schools and be able to attain the philosophic initiation. This includes the early Kabbalists of the occult schools, the Gnostics. The Gnostics were powerful people. The therapeutics, the Essenes, and other initiates of the medieval ages. To attain the philosophic initiation was the ambition of the enlightened man. This is it. You're it. You're the enlightened man. You're here. This is the ambition. Your ambition was to come here, and this is where you are. Why? Everyone's here right now. Everyone here right now is an initiate trying to ambitiously obtain enlightenment and knowledge.